The satellite phone crackled once, then died. Marcus Aldridge pressed it against his ear anyway, as if will alone could resurrect the signal. Nothing. Just the hollow static of a severed line and the distant percussion of mortars walking closer through the valley. He stood on the roof of what used to be a pharmaceutical distribution center, now a crumbling shell in eastern Syria where his humanitarian convoy had been pinned down for 11 hours. The sun hung low and red through columns of smoke, rising from burning fuel trucks 200 meters south. His security detail, 3 former British paratroopers, knelt by the rooftop's edge, scanning the tree line with rifles they'd already fired too many times. Below, in the courtyard, 24 aid workers huddled behind concrete barriers, medical supplies scattered around them like abandoned prayers. Aldridge was 42, worth $9 billion, and had spent the last decade building water infrastructure across conflict zones. He'd been in tight situations before, Mogadishu in 2019, Kandahar in 2021, but this felt different. The militia surrounding them wasn't interested in ransom or negotiation. They'd executed the local liaison at dawn, left his body in the road as punctuation. Now they were closing the noose, methodical and patient, content to let the convoy exhaust its ammunition before the final push. The convoy's 2 armored vehicles sat useless, fuel tanks punctured, radios dead from a coordinated jammer somewhere in the hills. "Movement east side," one of the paratroopers said quietly. His name was Davies, 20 years in, scarred hands, calm voice even now. Technical with a 50 cal, their positioning for enfilade fire. Aldridge didn't need translation. In 90 seconds, maybe less, that machine gun would have a clear angle on everyone in the courtyard. No cover, no options. He'd already done the math. They had 40 rounds of ammunition left between 3 rifles. The militia had spent all morning demonstrating they had hundreds. He thought about his daughter's voice on their last call, how she'd asked when he'd be home for her recital. He'd said 2 weeks. That was 4 days ago. Then he heard it, felt it first actually, a low rumble that wasn't artillery, deeper and steady, coming from the north. Davies heard it too, looked up, frowned. The sound grew, unmistakable now to anyone who'd spent time near military airbases. Turbofan engines, low altitude, moving slow. "That's a warthog," Davies said, disbelief threading through his professionalism. Through the smoke, barely visible against the burning sky, a shape materialized. Gray-green camouflage, straight wings, twin engines mounted high on the fuselage. An A-10 Thunderbolt II, flying at 400 feet like it had all the time in the world. The A-10 banked left, smoke trailing from its path through the haze, and for 3 seconds nobody on that rooftop breathed. There were no American ground forces within 200 kilometers, no forward operating bases. No logical reason for close air support to appear over this particular grid square in northern Syria, where a British billionaire and his aid convoy were about to be overrun. Yet there it was, wings level now, beginning a wide orbit around the compound. Aldridge watched the aircraft's nose drop slightly, saw the pilot adjusting angle, reading the battlefield. He'd seen A-10s before, years ago during a fact-finding trip to Afghanistan, but always distant, always part of someone else's war. Up close like this, the jet looked simultaneously prehistoric and utterly purposeful. Ugly in the way a sledgehammer is ugly, built for one job. Davies was already on his backup radio, the short-range emergency channel they'd been broadcasting on all morning with no response. Any Allied aircraft, this is Shepherd ground. We are coalition civilians under fire, 28 souls, grid November Victor 734, 821, how copy? Static, then a voice, calm, American, with a slight southwestern drawl that sounded like it was discussing weather rather than a gunfight. Shepherd ground, Hog 2-1. I copy 28 souls, danger close situation. Confirm you have armed hostiles in tree line east and south of your position. Davies' eyes widened. Hog 2-1, that's affirmative. Technical with heavy machine gun east side, approximately 70 meters. Multiple dismounts with small arms south tree line. We are critically low on ammunition and time. Roger Shepard, sit tight. I've got eyes on. The A-10 completed its orbit, and Aldridge realized the pilot had been using that first pass to build a three-dimensional map of the engagement. Now the aircraft rolled into a shallow dive, lining up on the eastern approach. The sound changed. The turbofans went quiet, relatively speaking, replaced by something else. A mechanical howl that started low and climbed in pitch. Aldridge had heard recordings of the GAU-8 Avenger cannon. 70 rounds per second, 30mm depleted uranium. The videos never did it justice. The gun fired for exactly 2 seconds. From the A-10's nose erupted a sound like the sky tearing in half, a sustained basso roar that vibrated through Aldridge's chest and made his vision blur. He couldn't see the rounds, they moved too fast, but he saw their impact. The technical disintegrated, not exploded, disintegrated. The truck, the gun, the 3 men operating it, all of it came apart in a spray of metal fragments and dust. The tree line behind it shredded, trunks splintering, branches falling in slow motion. Then silence, just wind and the fatting whine of the Avenger's barrels spinning down. "Jesus Christ," one of the paratroopers whispered. The A-10 pulled up, gained 50 feet, banked right. The pilot's voice came back, still calm, still conversational. "Shepard ground, Hog 2-1. Threat east is neutralized. I'm repositioning for South Tree Line. Keep your people down." Aldridge watched the aircraft maneuver. Despite its reputation as slow, the A-10 moved with surprising grace at low altitude, responding to the pilot's inputs like it was part of her rather than a machine she controlled. Another orbit, another dive. This time the gun fired 3 bursts, each one precisely placed. The militia fighters in the southern tree line, the ones who'd been advancing under cover for the past hour, scattered. Some tried to run. The A-10 adjusted, fired again. When the smoke cleared, the tree line was empty except for abandoned weapons and 4 burning motorcycles. Davies was back on the radio. "Hog 2-1, Shepard ground. Targets are broken and running. You just saved 28 lives. We cannot thank you enough." A pause. When the pilot spoke again, Aldridge heard something new in her voice. Not pride, something quieter. "Shepard, no thanks necessary. It's the job. Be advised, I'm Winchester on gun rounds, but I've got time on station. I'll maintain overhead cover until you can extract. What's your plan for exfil?" Davies looked at Aldridge, who looked at the smoking remains of their vehicles. "Hog 2-1, we're immobile. Vehicles are deadlined. We were hopping for evac, but command says nothing's available for 6 hours minimum." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Shepard, that's unacceptable. Stand by." They climbed to 800 feet and began a slow racetrack pattern overhead. Aldridge could see the pilot's helmet through the canopy when the aircraft banked. He wondered who she was. What series of decisions had put her in this specific piece of sky at this specific moment? Davies was wondering the same thing, judging by his expression. "She's not leaving," Davies said quietly. "What?" "Listen to her tone. She's not leaving until we're out." Davies was right. For the next 40 minutes, the A-10 circled the compound like a hunting bird. The pilot call sign Hog 2-1, actual name still unknown, maintained a continuous presence that transformed the tactical situation completely. The militia fighters who'd been so aggressive all morning melted back into the hills. Nobody wanted to be within 500 meters of anything that A-10 might decide to engage. Twice, the pilot called down reports of vehicle movement on approach roads. Both times the vehicles stopped, turned around, disappeared. Finally, as the sun touched the horizon, Davies' radio crackled with a new voice. British accent, clipped and professional. "Shepard ground, this is Reaper 6-4. We have 2 Chinooks inbound your position, ETA 12 minutes. Understand you have close air support overhead." Reaper 6-4, affirmative. "Hog 2-1 has been keeping us alive." "Good show. Tell your guardian angel we'll take it from here." Davies relayed the message. The A-10 pilot responded immediately. Shepard ground, Hog 2-1, glad you're getting a ride out. I'll stay overhead until the hellos are wheels down. Then, after a beat, and Shepard, tell your people they're brave as hell. Good luck out there. Hog 2-1, Shepard, before you go, can we get a name? These folks will want to know who to thank. Long pause. The A-10 banked into the setting sun, silhouetted against orange sky. Call signs enough, Shepard, but if they're curious, tell them Revenant sends her regards. The radio clicked off. The A-10 remained overhead until both Chinooks landed, rotors whipping dust across the compound. Aldridge watched 28 people climb aboard, medical supplies, personal gear, everything they could carry. As the first helicopter lifted off, he saw the A-10 waggle its wings once a fighter pilot's salute, then turn north and disappear into the dusk. It wasn't until 3 days later back in London that Aldridge started asking questions. Who was Revenant? Why had she been there? The answers, when they finally came through unofficial channels and off-record conversations with people who owed him favors, surprised him. Not because they were dramatic, though they were, but because they were incomplete, like trying to reconstruct a person from shadows. Her real name was Kira Voss, 34 years old, 12 years Air Force, 8 in the A-10. Originally from West Texas, small town outside Lubbock that most people couldn't find on a map. She'd enlisted straight out of high school, worked her way through avionics training, then applied for pilot slots when the opportunity opened. Made it through flight school in the top 15%. Requested A-10s specifically when most pilots her year wanted F-35s or F-22s. Her instructors remembered her as technically proficient but quiet, didn't socialize much, spent extra hours in the simulators running worst-case scenarios. The call sign Revenant came from her second deployment. Afghanistan, 2018. She'd been providing close air support for a Special Forces team pinned down in the Korangal Valley when her aircraft took heavy ground fire. 23mm rounds through the left engine, hydraulics shredded, half her flight controls non-responsive. Should have ejected. Instead, she'd stayed in the fight on one engine, completed 3 more gun runs to suppress the enemy position, then nursed the crippled A-10 back to Bagram with 14 warning lights and both wingmen expecting her to punch out any second. Landed gear up on the foam-covered runway, walked away without a scratch. The Special Forces team sent a bottle of bourbon to her squadron with a note, "To the ghost who wouldn't quit." The name stuck. But there was more, and this was the part that made Aldridge's inquiries hit walls. Kira Voss had a reputation. Not for recklessness, nobody who knew her would say that. For something else. For appearing in places she shouldn't be, on missions that didn't officially exist, pulling off saves that made no tactical sense until you heard the full story. Syria wasn't her first unauthorized intervention. There'd been others. Yemen in 2020, where she'd provided cover for a French hostage rescue despite having no clearance for that airspace. South Sudan in 2022, supporting a Doctors Without Borders convoy under attack. Each time, she'd been somewhere nearby on training exercises or conducting reconnaissance, and had somehow developed situational awareness of emergencies in progress. Some pilots called her a cowboy, others called her the best thing wearing wings. Her commanding officers had a more complicated relationship with her service record. 3 commendations for valor, 2 letters of reprimand for unauthorized actions. She'd been promoted to captain 2 years late because of the disciplinary issues, but nobody could deny her effectiveness. One retired colonel told Aldridge off the record, "Voss is the kind of pilot who makes you rewrite the rulebook." Problem is, she rewrites it herself first, then asks forgiveness later, if she ever asks at all. What fascinated Aldridge most was the why. He'd spent his career around high-performers, CEOs, engineers, surgeons, people driven by ambition or legacy or the simple need to prove something. Kira Voss didn't fit any of those patterns. She flew combat missions like some people breathe. Necessary, automatic. And when those missions saved lives, she disappeared before anyone could pin a medal on her chest. The humanitarian aid workers she'd pulled from bad situations over the years, And there were more than Aldridge initially realized. All told similar stories. Professional, calm, then gone, like she was running towards something or away from something, and the A-10 was the only place where whatever she was chasing made sense. Aldridge commissioned a painting. He hired an artist who specialized in military aviation, gave him photographs of an A-10 in flight, descriptions of Syrian sky at sunset, smoke and fire, and that specific angle of late afternoon light. The painting took 3 months. When it was finished, it showed an A-10 Thunderbolt II emerging from clouds of dark smoke, wings level, nose slightly down, as if the aircraft itself had made the decision to be there. In the lower corner, small enough that you had to look close to see it, the artist had added a name: Revenant. Aldridge hung the painting in his office in London, where it occupied the wall behind his desk. Visitors asked about it constantly. He told the story each time: the convoy, the siege, the pilot who appeared from nowhere. Some listeners thought he was exaggerating. Others understood immediately. A few, the ones who'd been in similar situations, just nodded. They knew. You don't forget the people who pull you back from the edge. What Aldridge didn't know, what he couldn't know, sitting in his London office with his painting and his incomplete answers, was that Kira Voss never forgot either. Every mission, every gun run, every radio call from someone in trouble stayed with her in ways that were both professional and profoundly personal. The job wasn't abstract. It was Davies' voice on the radio saying 28 souls. It was watching people who'd done nothing wrong except try to help others get caught in someone else's war. It was the specific mathematics of violence that said without intervention, those people would die. And it was the knowledge that she had the training and the aircraft and the willingness to do something about it. Her squadron mates noticed the pattern but rarely commented on it directly. In the ready room at Incirlik Air Base in Turkey, where her unit rotated through 6-month deployments, there was an unspoken understanding about Revenant. She volunteered for the boring missions, the long-duration combat air patrols, the reconnaissance flights that meant hours of nothing followed by more nothing. Other pilots avoided those assignments. Kira requested them. Because those were the missions where you had fuel and time and flexibility, where you could be in position when something went sideways. Her weapons systems officer, a captain named Tors who'd been flying with her for 18 months, understood her better than most. They'd spent enough hours in the cockpit together that communication had evolved beyond words. Tors knew when Kira was processing information, when she'd made a decision, when she was about to do something that would generate paperwork later. He also knew when to stay quiet and trust her judgment. 3 weeks after the Syria mission, the one that saved Marcus Aldridge and 27 others, Tors brought it up obliquely during a night flight over northern Iraq. They were on routine patrol, monitoring radio frequencies, watching ground movements through infrared. Nothing happening, just black sky and the steady drone of engines. "You hear about that painting?" Tors said over the intercom. Kira knew immediately what he meant. Word traveled in military aviation communities. "Yeah, seems excessive." "Guy's a billionaire. Excessive is baseline. But hey, at least he didn't name a building after you." "Please tell me that's not actually on the table." Tors laughed. "Relax, though you might want to check your air medal paperwork. I heard rumors." "Tors." "Just saying. That convoy was high profile. Aldridge has friends. You might not be able to dodge recognition this time." Kira didn't respond immediately. Below them, a line of trucks moved south on Highway 47, headlights visible through the FLIR. Civilians, probably. Definitely not their problem. She banked slightly west, continuing the patrol pattern. "I didn't do it for recognition," she said finally. "I know, that's why they want to give it to you." "Doesn't make sense." "Sure it does. You saved 28 people. That's the job, yeah, but you did it solo in contested airspace with no ground control and minimal intel. That's not standard procedure. That's initiative. Command likes initiative when it works." Kira adjusted throttle, climbed 200 feet to avoid some turbulence. Command also likes it when people follow their flight plans and don't make unauthorized combat decisions. True, but here's the thing, Voss. You've been doing this long enough that your unauthorized decisions have better outcomes than most people's authorized ones. Eventually, that matters more than the paperwork. Eventually. Eventually. And hey, between you and me, keep doing what you're doing. Because somewhere down there, right now, there's probably someone who's going to need us. And when they do, I'd rather be flying with someone who gives a damn than someone who follows the manual perfectly. The radio crackled with a routine check-in from AWACS. Kira responded automatically, confirmed position and status. Another hour of patrol ahead. She thought about Tor's words, about the painting in London she'd never see, about the pattern her career had traced through dozens of missions and countries and close calls that all added up to something she couldn't quite name but recognized instantly when it appeared. She joined the Air Force because her hometown offered 3 options: ranch work, gas station attendant, or military service. The Air Force promised technical training and a path away from West Texas dust. She discovered flying by accident. A recruiter had mentioned pilot programs were accepting more women, and Kira had thought, why not try? Flight school revealed something unexpected. In the cockpit, particularly in the A-10's cockpit with its thick titanium bathtub protecting her and its massive gun pointing forward, she felt purpose. Not happiness exactly. Purpose. The kind that comes from doing something difficult that matters.